The silent cry. The silence of deep space was broken by a signal that should not have existed. Commander Sarah Chen sat in the observation deck of Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha 7, watching the endless stars through reinforced viewport windows. The station orbited beyond Pluto, humanity's furthest outpost, designed to watch for asteroids and monitor solar radiation. What it was not designed for was receiving desperate pleas from across the galaxy. The quantum resonance detector began, producing sounds Sarah had never heard before. Instead of the usual clicks and beeps that indicated cosmic background radiation, it emitted a low musical tone that seemed to carry weight and sadness. Sarah frowned and moved to the main console, her fingers dancing across the holographic. "Interface! Computer, analyze incoming signal," she commanded. The artificial intelligence responded immediately with data that made Sarah's eyes widen. The signal was not random cosmic noise. It was organized, patterned, and clearly artificial. More shocking still, it was coming from a star system over 3,000 light-years away. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered. "Even if an alien civilization existed at that distance, no signal should be able to travel that far and remain coherent." Yet the evidence was undeniable. The musical tone continued, rising and falling in patterns that spoke of intelligence and desperate urgency. Sarah activated the station's most powerful analysis computers and waited. Hours passed as the machines worked to decode the alien transmission. When the results appeared on her screen, Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. The computer had successfully translated portions of the message, and what it revealed was terrifying. The transmission came from beings calling themselves the Kethvar. They described their civilization as ancient and peaceful, composed of entities that existed as living crystal formations. Their message spoke of beautiful cities that sang with harmonious frequencies, of art created from light itself, and of a society that had known no war for over 50,000 years. But now the Kethvar faced extinction. Something they called the Shadow Swarm had found their star system. The message described creatures of living darkness that consumed light and energy, leaving only cold void in their wake. The Shadow Swarm had already devoured 17 of the 23 worlds in Kethvar space. The remaining planets were dying, their crystal cities going dark one by one. The most chilling part of the message was its ending. The Kethvar had sent their plea to every star system they could reach, begging for help from any civilization that might receive it. They had been broadcasting for over 2 years, and Sarah's station was the first to respond. Sarah knew she had to act quickly. She composed an emergency report and transmitted it directly to Earth's United Defense Council, the military organization responsible for protecting humanity from external threats. Within 6 hours, she received a response requesting her immediate return to Earth. The journey back to Earth took 3 days, using the station's fastest shuttle. Sarah spent the time reviewing the Kethvar transmission, learning more about their desperate situation. The crystalline beings had shared technical specifications for their quantum communication system, star charts showing the location of their remaining worlds, and cultural information that painted a picture of a truly remarkable civilization. When Sarah arrived at UDC headquarters in Geneva, she found herself facing a room full of skeptical military officers and government officials. Admiral Marcus Stone, a gruff veteran who commanded Earth's experimental deep space fleet, listened to her presentation with obvious doubt. "Commander Chen," Admiral Stone said when she finished, "what you're describing sounds like science fiction. Aliens made of crystal? Living shadows that eat light? How do we know this isn't some elaborate hoax?" Sarah had expected this reaction. She activated the holographic projector and played the Kethvar transmission. The musical tones filled the room, and the translated text appeared in the air above the conference table. As the message continued, describing the beauty of the crystal, cities and the horror of their destruction, the skepticism in the room began to fade. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading expert in xenobiology, leaned forward with intense interest. "The quantum signatures in this transmission are unlike anything we've ever produced," she said. "The mathematical principles behind their communication system are centuries ahead of our current understanding. This is either genuine alien contact, or someone has made impossible technological breakthroughs and is playing an incredibly elaborate joke." General Patricia Hayes, the head of the UDC, studied the star charts the Kethvar had provided. Even if we accept that this is real, what can we do? Their star system is 3,000 light-years away. Our fastest ships would take over 10,000 years to reach them, even with our new quantum drives. Sarah had been prepared for this objection as well. The Kethvar included technical specifications for their faster-than-light communication system. Our scientists believe we can adapt their principles to create much more powerful quantum drives. According to preliminary calculations, we could reach their system in approximately 6 months. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. The implications were staggering. Not only had humanity made first contact with an alien civilization, but that contact had come with technology that could revolutionize space travel. Admiral Stone spoke first. Let's assume for a moment that this is all real. Why should we risk human lives to save aliens we've never met? What do we owe them? Before Sarah could respond, Dr. Vasquez answered. We owe them everything, she said quietly. The Kethvar have been broadcasting for 2 years, sending their plea to anyone who would listen. We're the only ones who responded. If we don't help them, they die. And if we let that happen, what does that say about humanity? The debate continued for hours. Some officials argued that Earth's resources should be focused on domestic problems. Others worried about the military implications of traveling to an alien star system. But as more experts examined the Kethvar transmission, the evidence became overwhelming. The aliens were real, they were dying, and they had specifically asked for help. General Hayes finally called for a vote. When the ballots were counted, the decision was clear. Earth would mount a rescue mission to save the Kethvar. Admiral Stone was placed in command of the operation, with Sarah serving as the mission's alien contact specialist. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of preparation. Earth's best engineers worked around the clock to build ships capable of faster-than-light travel using adapted Kethvar technology. The Void Fleet, as it came to be known, consisted of 12 vessels, 6 heavy cruisers, 4 destroyers, and 2 massive carrier ships loaded with fighters and marines. The crews were volunteers, men and women from every nation on Earth who had stepped forward when they learned about the mission. They trained intensively, studying everything known about the Kethvar and their mysterious enemy. The Shadow Swarm remained largely unknown, described only as entities of living darkness that consumed energy and light. As the Void Fleet prepared for departure, Sarah received another transmission from the Kethvar. The message was shorter and more desperate than the first. Only 3 worlds remained unconsumed. The crystal beings were loading their population onto massive Exodus ships, preparing to abandon their home system forever. They estimated they had less than a month before the Shadow Swarm completed its consumption of their civilization. Admiral Stone gathered his crew for a final briefing before departure. The hangar bay of the flagship UES Defiance was packed with men and women wearing the blue and silver uniforms of the Void Fleet. Stone stood before them, his weathered face serious but determined. Ladies and gentlemen, Stone began, in 6 hours we will make the first faster-than-light journey in human history. We're going to travel further from Earth than any human has ever gone, to help people we've never met fight an enemy we don't understand. Some of you might be wondering why we're taking this risk. He paused, looking out at the faces of his crew. The Kethvar could have asked for technology or resources. They could have demanded payment for their scientific knowledge. Instead, they simply asked for help. They told us about their beautiful crystal cities and their art made of light, and they begged us to save their children. That's all the reason I need. The crew erupted in applause, and Sarah felt tears in her eyes. She thought about the Kethvar message, about crystal beings watching their world die while sending desperate pleas across the galaxy. Humanity was about to answer that call, and she had never been more proud to be human. The Void Fleet launched, exactly on schedule. As the ship's quantum drives activated, Sarah watched Earth shrink away on the view screen. Behind them lay the only world humanity had ever known. Ahead lay the unknown dangers of deep space and their first contact with an alien civilization. But Sarah felt no fear, only determination. The Kethvar had called for help, and humanity was coming. The journey through quantum space was unlike anything the crew had experienced. Stars streaked past in impossible patterns, while the ships rode waves of folded spacetime toward a distant galaxy. For 6 months, the Void Fleet traveled through the void between worlds, carrying humanity's first message to the stars. We heard your call, and we are coming to help. Into the crystal realm, the quantum drives shut down with a sound like thunder, and suddenly the Void Fleet found itself in normal space for the first time in 6 months. Admiral Stone stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the main view screen as an alien star system appeared before them. The star itself was larger and bluer than Earth's sun, casting an ethereal light across the 12 ships of humanity's first interstellar rescue mission. "Sensors online," reported Lieutenant Martinez from the tactical station. "I'm reading multiple artificial structures throughout the system, but the energy signatures are incredibly weak. Most of them appear to be dormant." Sarah Chen studied the readings from her position at the communications console. The Kethvar had described their worlds as brilliant with crystal cities that sang harmonious melodies across space. What the sensors showed instead was a star system mostly shrouded in darkness. Only 3 planets still emitted the characteristic light signatures that indicated active Kethvar civilization. "Admiral," Sarah said, her voice tight with concern, "I'm detecting Kethvar distress signals from all 3 remaining worlds. They're requesting immediate assistance." Before Stone could respond, the space in front of the fleet began to shimmer. Something was approaching, but it moved unlike any ship the humans had ever seen. Instead of the metal hulls and visible engines, they expected what appeared before them looked like a living sculpture made of pure crystal. The alien vessel caught the blue starlight and refracted it into thousands of brilliant colors that danced across its translucent hull. "Incoming transmission," Sarah announced, working quickly to adapt the human communication systems to match Kethvar frequencies. The view screen flickered and then displayed something that took everyone's breath away. The being that appeared was beautiful beyond description. Its body seemed to be carved from living diamond, with internal light that pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat. Its face, while alien, conveyed intelligence and desperation in equal measure. When it spoke, its voice was like crystal bells chiming in perfect harmony. "Humans of Earth," the Kethvar said, and the universal translator converted its musical tones into English. "I am Resonance of Hope, speaker for the Exodus Fleet. We received your confirmation signal 6 months ago. We did not believe anyone would actually come." Admiral Stone stepped forward, his gruff military bearing softening in the presence of the crystalline being. "Speaker Resonance of Hope. I am Admiral Marcus Stone of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call and came as quickly as we could. What is your current situation?" The crystal being's light dimmed with what could only be described as sadness. "Our homeworld of Luminara still stands, but the shadow swarm grows stronger each day. They have consumed the light of 17 worlds, and their hunger only increases. Our Exodus ships carry the last survivors of our civilization, nearly 3 billion souls. But we cannot escape. The shadows follow wherever we go." Sarah leaned forward, studying the background of the transmission. Behind Resonance of Hope, she could see more crystal beings moving about what appeared to be a massive ship interior. Their lights were dim, and their movements spoke of exhaustion and despair. "Tell us about these shadow swarm," Stone requested. "What exactly are we fighting?" The crystal being's form flickered as if with remembered fear. "They are entities of pure darkness, Admiral Stone. They exist to consume light, energy, and life itself. Where they pass, nothing remains but cold void. They appear to be intelligent, but they do not communicate. They simply consume." Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had made the journey as the fleet's xenobiologist, spoke from her position near the science station. "How do they move? Do they have ships like us?" "They are their ships," Resonance of Hope replied. "Vast creatures of living shadow that travel through space like dark clouds. When they reach a world, they descend to the surface and begin feeding on all sources of energy. Our crystal cities, which have stood for 50,000 years, are devoured in mere hours." Admiral Stone studied the tactical displays showing the star system. "Why can't you simply leave? Travel to another star system?" "We have tried," the crystal being said. its light pulsing with frustration. But the shadows follow our energy signatures. Every time we attempt to flee, they pursue. They seem particularly drawn to the harmonic frequencies our bodies naturally emit. We cannot hide from them. Sarah had been monitoring communications from the human fleet during this conversation, and she noticed something unusual. "Admiral," she said quietly, "our ship's passive sensors aren't detecting us at all. Whatever these shadow swarm are, they don't seem to notice our presence." Dr. Vasquez nodded excitedly. "That makes sense. Kethvar physiology is based on ordered crystal structures that emit regular harmonic frequencies. Human bodies, by contrast, are biological chaos. Our neural activity, heartbeats, and cellular processes create what could be described as chaotic energy signatures that might not register to entities that hunt by detecting ordered patterns." Resonance of Hope's crystalline form suddenly brightened with what appeared to be hope. "You believe the shadows cannot detect you?" "It's possible," Stone said carefully. "But we need more information. Can you show us these creatures?" The crystal being nodded, and the transmission shifted to show external views from the Kethvar Exodus ships. What Sarah saw made her blood run cold. Moving between the outer planets of the system were vast shapes that seemed to absorb light itself. The shadow swarm entities were enormous, each one the size of a small moon, and they moved through space like living pools of darkness. Where they passed, even the starlight seemed to dim. "How many are there?" Stone asked grimly. "We count 47 major entities," Resonance of Hope replied. "Each one contains countless smaller shadow creatures that spread across planetary surfaces to feed. They have been growing larger and more numerous as they consume our worlds." Lieutenant Martinez studied the tactical data flowing from the Kethvar ships. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy readings from the remaining planets. The Kethvar cities are putting out enormous amounts of power, probably to maintain their defenses. That power draws the shadows like a beacon," Resonance of Hope explained. "We must maintain our city's energy fields or they will collapse, but the energy also makes us easier for the swarm to locate and attack." Sarah suddenly had an idea. "What if we could disrupt the shadows' hunting patterns? Our ships emit chaotic energy signatures that they can't detect. If we coordinate with your people, we might be able to create confusion in their ranks." Vasquez was already working at the science station, analyzing the data from both human and Kethvar sensors. The shadow entities appear to move in organized patterns, following energy gradients like predators tracking prey. But human neural activity generates quantum field fluctuations that could interfere with their sensory systems. Admiral Stone considered this information. "You're suggesting we use our biological chaos as a weapon?" "More like a cloak," Sarah corrected. "If we can position our ships strategically around the Kethvar Exodus fleet, we might be able to mask their energy signatures long enough for them to escape the system." Resonance of Hope's crystalline form practically blazed with excitement. "If you could do this, you would save our entire civilization. But the risk to your people would be enormous. The shadows are incredibly dangerous, and if they detect you, then we'll deal with that when it happens," Stone said firmly. "Right now, our priority is getting your people to safety. Can your ships coordinate with ours?" "Our technology is compatible with yours," the crystal being confirmed. "The quantum principles are similar, though our applications differ significantly." Over the next several hours, the combined human and Kethvar fleets worked together to develop a rescue plan. The humans were amazed by Kethvar technology, which used controlled harmonic frequencies to manipulate matter and energy. The crystal beings, in turn, were fascinated by human engineering, which relied on controlled chaos and redundant systems. The plan that emerged was risky but brilliant. The human ships would create a formation around the Kethvar Exodus fleet, using their chaotic energy signatures to create a kind of sensory dead zone. The crystal beings would lower their power outputs to minimum levels, making them harder to detect, while the human vessels used their unpredictable energy patterns to confuse the shadow swarm's hunting instincts. As the fleet prepared to implement their plan, Sarah found herself talking with Resonance of Hope about Kethvar culture. The crystal being described cities that sang in harmony, art created from shaped light, and a society that had achieved perfect peace through understanding and cooperation. "Your people are remarkable," Resonance of Hope said, studying the chaotic energy readings from the human ships. "We have spent millennia learning to create order and harmony. You have learned to thrive in chaos and still work together. Perhaps that is why you were the ones to answer our call." Admiral Stone activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Stone. We're about to attempt something that has never been tried before. We're going to use the natural chaos of human biology as a stealth system to hide an entire alien civilization. If this works, we'll have saved 3 billion lives. If it fails, we'll probably join them in being consumed by living shadows. Either way, we're going to show these shadow creatures what happens when they threaten innocent people." The combined fleet began moving toward the outer edge of the star system, where the shadow swarm was concentrated. Behind them, the last 3 worlds of the Kethvar civilization continued to shine their crystal light into the darkness, beacons of hope in a system being consumed by shadow. Ahead lay the unknown danger of creatures that existed to devour light itself. But between the shadows and the light flew the ships of humanity, carrying their message of defiance across the stars. The Kethvar had called for help, and Earth had answered. Now, in the depths of alien space, that answer would be tested against the darkness. Light against darkness. The shadow swarm detected the approach of the crystal ships exactly as Admiral Stone had predicted. Massive entities of living darkness turned in space like predators catching a scent, their forms shifting and flowing as they began to converge on what they perceived as a concentration of Kethvar energy signatures. What they couldn't detect was the invisible cage of chaotic energy surrounding their prey. "Contact in 30 minutes, reported Lieutenant Martinez from the tactical station of the UES Defiance. Around the human flagship, 11 other Earth vessels maintained precise formation around the Kethvar Exodus fleet. The crystal ships had dimmed their external lights to minimum levels, making them nearly invisible except for the faint harmonics they couldn't completely suppress. Sarah Chen monitored the communication channels, maintaining constant contact with Resonance of Hope and the other Kethvar ship commanders. The crystal beings were following the plan perfectly, trusting humanity to guide them through the darkness. "The smaller shadow entities are breaking off from the main group," Dr. Vasquez observed from her science station. "They're moving to intercept, but their approach vectors are scattered. They can't get a clear lock on the Kethvar ships." Admiral Stone watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The human ship's chaotic energy signatures were working exactly as hoped, creating a sensory dead zone that confused the shadow swarm's hunting instincts. But he knew this was just the beginning of their troubles. "Admiral," Sarah said urgently, "Resonance of Hope is reporting that the shadows are beginning to adapt. Their movement patterns are becoming more organized." Stone had expected this. No predator survived for long without learning to overcome new challenges. "All ships implement Chaos Pattern Omega. Randomize your energy outputs and movement vectors. Make it impossible for them to predict where we'll be." Throughout the human fleet, ships began performing seemingly random maneuvers. The UES Defiance rolled suddenly to starboard while increasing power to its port engines. The destroyer Prometheus executed a sharp climbing turn that would have been tactically useless in normal combat. The carrier Hermes launched fighters that immediately scattered in all directions, their pilots following no discernible pattern. To an outside observer, the human fleet appeared to have lost its collective mind. But that chaos was precisely what saved them. The shadow entities trying to track the fleet's movements found themselves unable to predict where the ships would be from one moment to the next. Their approach patterns became increasingly confused as they tried to intercept targets that refused to follow logical flight paths. "It's working," Resonance of Hope reported, wonder evident in the crystal being's harmonic voice. "The shadows are falling behind. They cannot match our speed when they cannot predict our course." But Admiral Stone knew they weren't out of danger. Yet, the shadow swarm might be confused, but they weren't giving up. The largest entities, each one the size of a small moon, were beginning to move with purpose. Instead of trying to track individual ships, they were attempting to surround the entire area where the fleet was operating. "They're trying to box us in," Stone realized. All ships, prepare for combat maneuvers. We're going to have to fight our way out. The first shadow entity to close distance moved like a living nightmare. It was a writhing mass of absolute darkness that seemed to devour the light of nearby stars. As it approached the human formation, smaller shadow creatures began breaking off from its bulk, racing toward the fleet like droplets of liquid darkness. "Weapons free," Stone commanded. "Target the smaller entities first. Don't let them reach the Kethvar ships." The Void Fleet opened fire with every weapon at their disposal. Particle beams, plasma cannons, and kinetic projectiles lanced out toward the approaching shadows. But something unexpected happened when the human weapons struck their targets. Instead of simply destroying the shadow creatures, the energy weapons seemed to cause them intense pain. "They're recoiling from our weapons' fire," Dr. Vasquez reported with excitement. "Our energy weapons create chaotic interference patterns that disrupt their cohesion." "More than that," Sarah added, studying the sensor readings. "The quantum signatures from our weapons are actually damaging them at a fundamental level. They're creatures of ordered darkness, and our chaotic energy is like poison to them." Resonance of Hope's voice suddenly filled the communication channels. "Humans of Earth, your weapons create harmony frequencies that oppose the shadows. Our sensors show that your chaotic patterns are actually restoring light to consumed areas." Admiral Stone felt a surge of hope. Humanity might have found not just a way to fight the shadow swarm, but a way to defeat them. "All ships concentrate fire on the largest entities. Let's see what happens when we hit them with everything we've got." The human fleet coordinated their attack on the nearest major shadow entity, focusing dozens of weapons on a single target. The results were spectacular. Where the chaotic energy weapons struck the creature of living darkness, light began to return. The shadow entity writhed in what could only be described as agony, its form becoming unstable as the ordered darkness that composed its being was disrupted by waves of quantum chaos. But the shadow swarm adapted quickly. The damaged entity retreated while others moved to flank the human fleet. Worse, the shadows began releasing clouds of smaller creatures that scattered in all directions, making it impossible to target them all. "We need to get closer to the planet," Stone decided. "If we can get the Kethvar ships to safety, we can focus entirely on fighting these things." The combined fleet raced toward Luminara, the last inhabited world of the Kethvar civilization. As they approached, Sarah could see why the crystal beings called it the Jewel of the Galaxy. The planet's surface was covered with crystalline cities that caught and refracted the blue starlight into brilliant displays of color. Even under siege, Luminara was beautiful beyond description, but the beauty was under assault. Shadow creatures covered portions of the planet's surface like a spreading infection, consuming the light from crystal cities and leaving only cold darkness behind. The Kethvar defenders on the surface were fighting desperately, using harmonic weapons that could temporarily disrupt shadow creatures, but couldn't destroy them permanently. "Surface bombardment commencing," Stone announced. The human fleet opened fire on the shadow creatures attacking Luminara, their chaotic energy weapons, cutting through the darkness like swords of light. Where the weapons struck, the shadows retreated, leaving the crystal cities to shine once more. Resonance of Hope's excitement was palpable in the communications. "Admiral Stone, your weapons are actually healing our world. The areas where shadows have fed are being restored by your chaotic energy." Dr. Vasquez was already working on understanding the phenomenon. "The shadow creatures consume ordered energy patterns," she explained rapidly. "But human technology is based on controlled chaos. When our energy intersects with areas the shadows have damaged, it provides the quantum randomness needed to restore natural order." Sarah suddenly realized the full implications. "We're not just fighting these creatures," she said with growing excitement. "We're the cure. Human chaotic energy can actually undo the damage the shadow swarm has caused." "Admiral, Stone made a decision that would change the course of the battle. All ships, new mission parameters. We're not just evacuating the Kethvar. We're taking back their worlds." The battle for Luminara became a turning point in galactic history. Human ships dove through clouds of shadow creatures, their chaotic energy weapons carving paths of light through the darkness. Kethvar ground forces, seeing hope for the first time in years, rallied and began pushing back against the shadows that had consumed their cities. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Vasquez made a startling discovery. "Admiral," she called out excitedly, "I've found something incredible. Human emotional energy is even more effective against the shadows than our weapons." "What do you mean?" Stone demanded. "The Kethvar exist in harmonic balance," Vasquez explained quickly. "Their emotions are ordered and peaceful, but human emotions are chaotic, passionate, and unpredictable. When our people feel strongly about something, we generate quantum field fluctuations that are toxic to shadow entities." Sarah felt a wild idea forming. What if we could amplify that effect? What if the entire fleet focused their emotions on saving the Kethvar? Admiral Stone didn't hesitate. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the Admiral. I want everyone to think about why we came here. Think about the crystal cities these creatures have destroyed, about the 3 billion innocent beings who asked for our help. Think about the children who will die if we fail. Feel that anger, that determination, that absolute refusal to let evil triumph." Throughout the human fleet, 6,000 men and women focused their emotions on a single purpose: protecting the innocent and defeating the darkness. The effect was immediate and devastating to the shadow swarm. The chaotic emotional energy radiating from the human ships created a field of quantum interference that caused shadow creatures to dissolve on contact. The largest shadow entity, the one that seemed to command the swarm, made a final desperate attack on the human flagship. It rushed toward the UES Defiance like a living black hole, intent on consuming the source of the chaotic energy that was destroying its kind. Admiral Stone stood on his bridge watching death approach and felt only determination. "You picked the wrong species to threaten," he said quietly. The shadow entity struck the Defiance's shields and simply vanished, destroyed by the concentrated chaotic energy of a crew that refused to yield. Across the star system, the remaining shadow creatures began retreating, fleeing the toxic presence of humanity's emotional chaos. In the aftermath of the battle, as the shadow swarm disappeared into deep space, the Kethvar emerged from their hiding places to find their worlds being restored. Everywhere human weapons had fired, everywhere human emotions had focused, the HFY crystal cities began to sing once more. Resonance of hope stood in the command center of Luminara, surrounded by crystal beings who had thought their world was lost forever. The speaker's form blazed with joy as bright as their home world's restored cities. "Admiral Stone," the crystal being said, "your people have not just saved our civilization. You have given us back our homes, our history, our future. How can we ever repay such a gift?" Stone considered the question seriously. Around him, the bridge crew of the Defiance watched with pride as Luminara's crystal cities sang their harmonic songs into space once more. "Help us protect others," he said finally. "The galaxy is full of peaceful peoples who might face threats they can't handle alone. Stand with us, and we'll make sure no one has to face the darkness alone." Thus began the Crystal Terra Alliance, a partnership between the ordered harmony of the Kethvar and the chaotic determination of humanity. Together they would become the galaxy's defenders, the guardians who answered every call for help. And in the depths of space, where shadow creatures fled to lick their wounds, word spread throughout the galaxy. There was a new force among the stars. They were called humans. They came from a world of chaos and conflict, and they would travel any distance to protect the innocent. The Kethvar had called for help across the void, and humanity had answered with fire and fury and the unbreakable determination that no innocent being would face the darkness alone. It was the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure, becoming the guardians of the galaxy.